Hello everybody, welcome back to the Red Bull Ring, and as you can see from that shot, there are some clouds around here and the threat of rain, and that I don't think is going to be the final time we say that this weekend here in the Styrian Mountains, this wonderful venue for the penultimate weekend of DTM 2023. It's actually got warmer than it was for the first free practice session a few hours ago. It's nearly 22 degrees, but much more overcast, more clouds in the sky. No rain as yet, but certainly if you're wanting to get on with it and get a dry setup and polish things up ahead of tomorrow, if I was one of the drivers, I would be wanting to get out there pretty sharpish now, just in case that rain does fall. So there, Riccardo Fella, who, along with all of the other Audis, struggling in the test session yesterday and struggling in the first free practice session this morning. Had a good chat in the break with the Abt Sportsline team, and they're not going to give up, but they know this is going to be a tough weekend. It is partly due to the altitude of the circuit, 700 metres, so thin air, and only the Ferraris and the BMWs are turbo-powered cars. The Audis are always a car which benefits from being quick in the corners, not necessarily straight-line speed. The engine can't get fed enough air if it's not a turbo-powered car, and the Audis struggle, therefore, not just to get to top speed, and top speed's always been a bit of an Achilles heel for them, but also they're explaining to me the way the car gets up to that speed. It's the acceleration and the torque that they're struggling with here at the Red Bull Ring. They've been asking all season long for less restriction on the car, bigger restrictor. That's for it again here. It's not as a team, they're not allowed to do that. It's the brand that has to ask for it, the manufacturer. They have to have the discussions, but it hasn't happened yet. And to boot, as we mentioned earlier on, they've also got 5 more kilograms on board the cars compared to what they had last time out at the Saxon Ring. So all the Audis, including championship contender Riccardo Fella, struggling in that first free practice session. They were all down in the doldrums. Kelvin van der Linde 24th, and Riccardo Fella was absolutely stone last in 28th place. So what they are hoping for is some good old British weather, a bit of rain to come down this weekend. That might just make the difference. It looks like we might get some tomorrow. Sunday, at the moment, the forecast looks more positive in terms of dry weather, but we're in the middle of the Styrian Mountains. The weather is volatile. We're at high altitude, and if you try to predict the weather here, well, you're quite honestly wasting your time, really, because it completely changes with the blink of an eye. So here we are, the Red Bull Ring, a fantastic season that we've had so far. Mirko Bortolotti, the championship leader, the only driver to win more than one race this season. He's won 3 of them, and he's won 3 in the last 3 race weekends to move into the championship lead by just 9 points from Thomas Preining, the young Austrian driver, former Porsche Deutschland champion in the Porsche Carrera Cup, driver that competed in GT Masters and finished 5th last year in this championship. Should have been higher, really. Got unlucky in the big, huge shunt that we had at Hockenheim at the end of the season. But he was a winner last year, got Porsche's first win in the DTM at the Norris Ring, and he won here at the Red Bull Ring last year. They too have said they've been struggling with top-end speed, and it certainly wasn't a mega first free practice session in terms of out-and-out lap times. For the driver second in the championship, Thomas Preining, he was 18th. But it's not just about getting one quick lap in free practice. It is about setting up for the race distance and getting a car which is good over a longer run as well. So don't read everything into it, but there is Thomas Preining. Mirko Bortolotti, the championship leader in the Lamborghini, wasn't too bad this morning. 3rd quickest he went, so best of the Lamborghinis with a 128.498. But it was Mercedes that dominated the session. Josefa Vega quickest, Arjun Maini 2nd. There you can see the championship standings. 56 points available this weekend, another 56 at Hockenheim. And so you've got to be within 56 points at the end of the weekend to stay in the championship fight. At the moment, Shelton van der Linde is 60 behind. Lucas Stoltz, who had a terrific weekend at the Saxon Ring with a win and a second, shot up to 5th place in the standings. He's 67 behind. Lucas Auer had a bad weekend at Saxon Ring. He's 78 behind. They've all got to outscore Mirko Bortolotti and get within 56 points to stay in the championship fight going into that final weekend in a few weeks' time at Hockenheim. So the driver's about to go out for another 45-minute practice session. Jesse Vega in the Mercedes quickest in free practice 1, but yesterday in the test session it was René Rast who's won here 3 times in the past that was quickest, and the rain has just started to come down right on cue as the session goes live. I can see looking out the commentary box window certainly quite a bit of rain falling on the windscreen of René Rast's car, and then you can see it from yourself, from your own point of view, as Clement Schmidt in the Grasser Racing Team Lamborghini heads out onto the circuit. I should imagine that they're all on slick tyres, so they've got to be careful here. My name's Chris Hartley. Welcome along to this second free practice session. Thanks very much for joining us. And in the box with me here in Austria is Brian Oliver.
Good afternoon, Chris. Oh, this is going to be exciting, isn't it? The rain coming down just in the nick of time. Now, we did wonder whether teams might keep the cars in the garage if it started raining, but of course, with rain on the forecast for tomorrow, this might actually be a really, really important bit of time and some opportunities to gather information, not only to get a dry setup, but also to get a wet setup. So we might see all the cars out on the track whilst the rain's falling to actually get a good setup for tomorrow. It's going to be a really important 45 minutes. If we can get through this without a red flag, I'll be pretty impressed.
Also, you've got to figure out what's it like on slick tyres when it does rain a bit. How much can we push it? Because this might happen in qualifying tomorrow. It could be a thing. So, and in the race, how much rain do you need before you really have to switch to the treaded tyre? How long can you stick with the slick tyre? It's all good information, but it comes at a price if you get it wrong and throw it off the road. So we'll have to be a little bit circumspect, potentially. There is Lucas Stoltz, who has been bagging the points of late to rise up into the top 5 in the championship. Mirko Bortolotti, the one that's been scoring the most points. We had lots of track limits infringements in the first session. No surprise, it's often the case here at the Red Bull Ring. It's usually turns 9 and 10, the downhill double right-hander at the end of the lap. But actually, most of them were at that corner. You're looking at turn 1. It rises uphill into the right-hander. The thing is, Brian, there's a very wide runoff area there, so it tempts the drivers, doesn't it, into turn 1 to keep their foot on the gas, because you've got to be quick out of turn 1 because it's a very steep uphill climb all the way up to turn 3.
Yes, absolutely. It's getting a good run out of the corner. Now, out of turns 9 and 10, you can see those bollards that were there, the 3 bollards. Well, there weren't any at the end of free practice this morning. There was 1 that I could count out of the 6. So they've got some nice new shiny ones there. How long will they last? I think the stewards are going to start clamping down on this. They're also going to be clamping down on Jack Aitken. He's under investigation for speeding in the pit lane already. And we've already got 2 cars with track limit infringements at turn 1. So they're starting as they mean to go on.
They can blame the weather for that. It was slippy. I slipped wide. I didn't mean to do it.
It's a fair cop, Governor. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, Brian was on Bollard watch this morning, so in between sessions he's just invested in some shares in the Bollard supplying company.
I'm rich.
I think we're going to get through a few this weekend, aren't we?
Yes. Fortunately, our director has decided not to put a camera in those bollards this weekend. Otherwise, we'd be having shares in the camera company as well.
Absolutely right. Right, so big session this. But is it going to be ruined by the rain? How long will that rain stay? One of the drivers carrying an onboard camera, or several onboard cameras for this weekend, is Mirko Bortolotti, the championship leader, with this 9-point advantage, but also, I think critically, with a lot of momentum behind him. He was on the podium here last season, his first season of DTM, because he led much of the championship last year. All fell off the rails a bit in the final few weekends, but finished 4th in the end in the points, but determined to come back and win it. And the cool Italian on board, you can see those steely blue eyes focused on the road ahead, concentrating. You try controlling more than 500 brake horsepower on slick Pirelli tyres with rain coming down.
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, you're all right, absolutely. That's why these drivers are the best GT drivers in the world. So Bortolotti has set the early benchmark time, 1:31.8. 1:28.3 was the fastest time that we had from Jesse Vega in the first practice session. Arjamani was second, Mirko Bortolotti was third, and Jack Aitken, right at the very end of the session, went from 16th quickest to 4th quickest. And I was looking at the sector times and the breakdown of laps, the printout that we get from free practice 1, and Jack did, I reckon, the longest run in free practice 1. He did 13 laps at the start of the session on the trot to set it up for a race distance. And the very encouraging news for Jack Aitken fans and the Ferrari was that he started in the 131s, then the low 130s, and then he nailed every lap in the 129s. Got down in the end in that long run into the 128, so 128.8. So the Ferrari looks good on a longer run as well. Then he went back out again at the end on his very last lap to put in his best lap of the session, 4th quickest, and a qualifying type lap with a 1:28.5. So I reckon the Ferrari looks good for qualifying, but also crucially for the race and the longer runs around here.
We discussed this morning, that was getting the tyres into the window. This is such a smooth surface, quite the opposite to Sachsenring a few weeks ago, and it takes longer to get the tyres into that window. We're suggesting maybe up to 3 pre-laps for the BMW, so it may be getting out there and putting the laps in to get the tyres up to temperature. I think we're going to see a much busier qualifying session tomorrow. Team radio from Dennis Olsen.
We're at the point that we think it's dry enough. We can switch to quali simulation at any time. Keep me posted.
Oh, that's a good bit of information, isn't it? Quali simulation.
Rain's going away then, so
yeah,
it wasn't that bad. It's eased enough. It's not enough to affect them. You can go and push on, they're saying to Dennis Olsen there, who can play a pivotal role for the Manthey EMA team as teammate to one of the drivers battling for the championship, teammate, of course, to Thomas Preining this year. Both drivers in their 2nd season in the DTM. Sheldon van der Linde making his way past the Mercedes of Josefa Vega then, and Sheldon has set the absolute best first sector time so far. Just to recap, sector 1, pretty short. It takes in turn 1, the climb uphill, through the kink at turn 2, and that's it. It doesn't even take in turn 3, so it's a short first sector. The middle sector's the longest one. That's the one you've really got to get right. That takes in turns 3, 4, 5 and 6, and the last sector takes in the downhill run from turn 7, turn 8, turn 9 and turn 10. So on board with Sheldon van der Linde, effectively looking over his shoulder as he makes his way down through turn 10, lets it drift out wide, not too far over the curbs, and comes out. It's going to be a pretty good run this from the reigning champion, 1:29.025 seconds by 3/10. He goes quicker than Franck Pereira, Ian Nguyen, Marco Wittmann, Lauren Heinrich and René Rast inside the top 6 in the early stages.
That was great watching him go through 7 and 8. You see him just hitting the absolute edge of the workable surface, using all of the track. He just kicked up a bit of dust. Wonderful craftsmanship from Sheldon van der Linde there. The rain, I think, has stopped. I'm just looking out the window. The pit straight looks completely dry, but looking up towards the mountains, well, you can't really see them. It's so misty, and I think there might be more rain coming in. You can see that Marco Wittmann has gone the quickest of anybody in Sector 1. The BMWs have been very strong in free practice 1 as a BMW 1st and 2nd at the moment. I think before too long it could be a 1-2-3 BMW. Sheldon van der Linde at the top, René Rast. I think Marco Wittmann's about to join them.
Yeah, Marco Wittmann went absolute best in the first sector, but René Rast is not far behind him on the road, and he went a fraction quicker. But Franck Pereira, critically, has done the absolute best middle sector, the longer sector, with the 39.4. So Franck Pereira in the number 94 Lamborghini could be about to go to the top of the times. René Rast has had a good start to the lap. Let's see what the middle sector is like for the 3-time champion now, of course, in his first season as a BMW driver. He's won 3 times in DTM around here at the Red Bull Ring, but of course always without Ian. Yeah, Franck Pereira does go top of the times, only just 27 thousandths of a second quicker than Sheldon van der Linde. But Rast sets the absolute best middle sector. Look at Franck Pereira two-wheeling it on the exit to turn 1 as he absolutely swung it over the curbs. The left-hand sided tyres dug in and it hopped up onto 2 wheels there. Spectacular stuff from the Frenchman. René Rast swings out wide. Into the pits comes Dennis Olsen. He's right onto the curbs here as he charges out of turn 10. A downhill run here for the first part of the start-finish. Straight over the line he'll go now. Will he go fastest? Yes, by nearly 4/10 of a second. 1:28.6. Well, only 3/10 of a second off the absolute best dry times of free practice 1. So even though it's still spitting with rain, it's not affecting these cars very much at all.
Great to see René Rast at the top of the timesheets as well. Wonderful stuff. But boy, where's Franck Pereira? You think he might have been trying a bit there as he hustled that car around. Now we're on board with Sheldon van der Linde. He's another one who's exploring the limits of the track. He picks up a nice bit of curb there as he heads around turn 6 and then out towards turn 7, and just exploring the limits of adhesion, seeing what he can get away with. Across the curbing he goes. That's about on the edge of track limits there as well, I should think. think. So Sheldon van der Linde currently in P3, but looking to improve on that.
Yeah, so they're packing the early part of the session in with qualifying simulation runs. Jack Aitken's gone 5th, and Andrea Caldarelli, who was impressive in that first free practice session this morning in the wonderfully liveried gold number 19 Grasser Racing Team Lamborghini. He's up there again in the top 6. Arjun Maini had a great first session as well, 2nd quickest, and he's on a personal best lap here, the Indian driver. First half of the season, completely forgettable for him, a real nightmare he's had, but started to come good at the Saxon Ring with his best result of the season so far, a 7th place finish. And here he comes, and he's about to head over the line, and this will definitely be his best lap of the session. It puts him 6th overall, just ahead of Caldarelli. So Rennie Rast's BMW, from Pereira's Lamborghini, and Sheldon van der Linde's BMW, the top 3 at the moment. We've talked about Thomas Priding being an Austrian that would love to go well here and win like he did. His proudest moment, I should think, winning in his home race last year. But don't forget Lucas Auer, Austrian driver as well, and Clemens Schmidt likewise want success here as we get Maro Engel's team radio.
Before I brake normal, I lose the rear, now I brake early, I'm slow, always the same shit.
Oh dear. Apologies for the language. Maro Engel is
the same problem.
Same problem. Brake early, brake late, so he's not happy with the balance of the car. Although pretty well, wasn't he, in certainly the first half of the first free practice session. Maro was out there. I forget now where he finished. Finished 5th, so pretty good. He was only 2.5 tenths off the absolute best lap time this morning. So Maro will keep pushing on. Jack Aitken likewise has done 2 personal best sector times. He kicks up the dust here, the British driver, a winner of course in the DTM in his first season. He signed up to do a full season in the IMSA Sports Car Championship next year, but Brian, you were chatting with him this morning, and it hopefully might not be a problem in terms of him getting back in DTM next year.
Well, certainly there's no major date clashes, and he would love to be back in next year. It's obviously all about deals and budgets and things, but we would dearly love to see Jack Aitken back in DTM next year. I've got everything crossed for that. He brings an awful lot, and he's just brought a P2, a 128.865 to the table. So Ferrari looking very good here at the Red Bull Ring. The altitude favouring the turbocharged car as Arjun Maini. I think that might have been track limits somewhere along the way. Rene Rast exploring the limits as well. News on the cones, well, 2 down, 4 to go. That's what I say.
Here's Marco Wittmann at about 5 o'clock this afternoon in the paddock. He's going to have a simulation race battle, a sim race battle against Kelvin van der Linde, which will attract lots of fans, no doubt. It's great. I had a walk around the paddock earlier on. There's loads to do here. The ADAC do a terrific job for the young fans in particular of DTM in the fan zone. There's stages where drivers do Q&As. There's a little karting track. There's a proper kart track on the outside of turn 1 here as well. Lots of things like reaction tests that you can do. There's a big ball pit for the younger fans. Loads of merch stalls and stands to get the colours of your favourite drivers and T-shirts and caps. There's a lot going on here. It really is very fan-friendly, and yeah, they do these things like the Q&As and the sim battles between the drivers, especially on a Friday, so good to see. Marco Wittmann, just under half a second off. He's in 9th place, but look who's top of the times. Thierry Vermeulen, 128.613. Rennie Rast set his personal best lap last time around, and there's only 5 thousandths of a second between them, so Aitken down to 3rd, Maro Engel is 4th, Arjun Maini 5th, and he's in 6th place. We've got Sheldon van der Linde as we ride on board with Luigi Auer.
Well, we're looking at Luigi Auer, just exploring the limits of the track. You talked about the go-kart track just down in the paddock. His niece and nephew were doing hot laps in that this morning. That's Luigi Auer. So look over your shoulders. There might be some other hours coming through the ranks in a few years' time.
Lucas Auer pushing on. He had a lot of momentum behind him, and he was certainly making ground up on the championship contenders until we got to the Saxon Ring. All fell off the rails a little bit there for him. He said that I can't remember ever a weekend where so many different things went wrong. It all conspired against him. But he's still in the mix. If, you know, a good weekend here, a really good weekend here, he could still be pushing on. He'll be buoyed by the pace of the Mercedes in free practice 1, that's for sure. It's David Schumacher at his 2nd season of DTM. He's on a personal best lap here. But he's got a bit of traffic ahead, hasn't he? And he goes way out wide coming out of turn 9. He's not the only one. He's on the back of a Lamborghini of Pereira as they come through. Lucas Stoltz in there as well. 3 of them come through over the line, and Schumacher drops a little bit of time there through that last sector, so 9 tenths of a second down in the end. But Lucas Auer, we were watching earlier, he went 4th quickest, so he's now the best of the Mercedes. Engel and Maini are 5th and 6th. So Mercedes up there again as they were in free practice 1.
And Thierry Vermeulen is just a couple of tenths shy of the quickest time this morning. So even with the slightly greasy track, although I think it's probably dried out a bit, how wide does our go? Avoiding the 2 remaining bollards there and the 2 remaining bollards there, out onto the pit straight. It is such a long straight, this, and the uphill bit. Get a good run onto this straight, then you've got a great advantage into 1, 2 and 3. But that is why it has been policed so carefully for track limits, because it does give such an advantage when you get a good run out of 10 and when you get a good run out of 1.
We talked this morning about top speed and top end speed around here, so it's not the sort of circuit where you instantly think, yeah, that's a big fast track with big fast straights. Hasn't really got that, except for the start finish straight is pretty long, and as I mentioned this morning, it's 2 quick corners at the end of the lap downhill, so you're already, you know, almost flat out when you get onto the start finish straight. The first half of the start finish straight runs downhill as well. So it is a quick straight, that, and top speed, even though, you know, there are other tracks with more straights and perhaps longer straights, it is key here. And that is where Audi and Porsche have been saying, look, that's where we're missing out top speed, but also how we get to the top speed. The BMWs, through the speed traps in free practice 1, were first, second and third. Sandro Olsen, 240.8 kilometres an hour. Marco Wittmann, 240.2, René Rast 239.7. The fastest Audi top speed was Matteo Drudi, who was about halfway down the list, 236 kilometres an hour. That's 4 kilometres, 4.5 kilometres. Doesn't sound a lot, but it makes the difference. It's by no means the fastest top speed we have, is it? We pushed 260, 265 kilometres an hour at tracks like the Lausitz Ring and the Saxon Ring, but it's definitely a factor around here.
It is. I was talking to Finn Gersitz, who's one of the GT Masters drivers in a Porsche this morning, and he reckoned that they were 7 kilometres an hour slower than the BMWs along the straight here. So there is definitely that speed differential. We saw the Audis all clustered together at the bottom of the timing screens this morning. I wouldn't rule out a change to the BOP overnight. I do think there may be some modifications. We've seen it on previous weekends where the ADAC, along with the SRO, revise the BOP as the weekend progresses, and the Audis certainly do look to be on the back foot, and the Porsches to a degree. We did just see a bit of rain on the camera lens again there. Still nothing too much to talk about as Lucas Stoltz peels off into the pit lane. But that was quite a frantic first quarter of an hour of the session. It felt like a lot of teams just gathering a lot of data on the greasy tracks. Just kind of calmed down a bit now. We've got quite a few back into the pits. We're still right on board with Lucas Auer, the driver who is still exploring the limits in that Mercedes.
Yeah, just to recap, if you weren't watching free practice 1, news on the balance of performance is that Audi are 5 kilograms heavier than they were at the Saxon Ring. BMWs are 20 kilograms heavier. They are expected to have the strength here because they've got the turbo-powered engines, like the Ferraris, they're turbo-powered engines, but good traction as well. It's a circuit where traditionally they've gone very well, the BMWs, so they've been hit with 20 kilograms extra ballast, BOP ballast, compared to the Saxon Ring. And then the Ferraris are 5 kilograms, like the Audis, they're 5 kilograms heavier as well. Mercedes and Porsche a bit lighter, 5 kilograms less each, and the Lamborghinis are the same as they were, and some slight tweaks to the boost pressure for the BMWs, slightly less for them, and just a tiny tweak of 0.005 less bar for the Ferraris. So yeah, Audi saying we need bigger influx of power, we need a bigger air restrictor to get more power into the car, because it's just struggling around this high altitude with our normally aspirated engine. They don't get it, but they also then get 5 kilograms additional weight on the car. And to remind you that when not in qualifying, but when we get to the race, the top 3 from the previous race will carry success ballast. That's completely separate to the BOP ballast that they get. So Mirko Bortolotti is the winner of race 2, will have 20 kilograms on board his car. Lucas Stoltz, who finished second, will have an additional 10. And although Riccardo Feller was on the podium and initially claimed third place in race 2 at the Saxon Ring, for a move earlier in the race he was penalised, 5-second penalty, dropped him down to 6th place. So from Pereira inherited third, and he will have 5 kilograms of success ballast on his Lamborghini.
See a bit of rain on the windscreen still. We're talking about tyre temperatures, and the Porsches really struggle around here to get heat into the front tyres. Of course, the engine is at the rear of the car. Getting the front tyres up to temperature takes some doing, apparently, and therefore you're lacking in braking and in steering. One of the topics of discussion during the week has been the whole issue of tyre heating. Of course, tyre warmers are not allowed, and the ADAC have clarified that any device or measure to increase tyre temperature above the ambient temperature is inadmissible. That includes leaving the tyres in the sun, which some of the teams had clocked onto that, and potentially leaving tyres in the sun. Let the sun shine on a bit. Tyre warmers? Who needs tyre warmers? Nature's great tyre warmer.
Especially when it was 30 degrees
Yes,
at the Lausitz Rings, 30 degrees at the Saxony. They'll try every trick in the book. Yeah, Martin Tomczyk, the of course former champion himself, sporting director, motorsports director at ABT this year, was quite vocal about this, and he said, look, they need to check on this because sunlight comes into garages in different positions. You know, somebody who's one end of the pit lane will have some sun coming into the garage. If you're at the other end of the pit lane, there might be none. And he said at one point we had a bit of sun coming into the front of the garage, so we physically moved our tyres back to the back of the garage because it's in the rules that you can't use anything to heat the tyres.
Bless him.
He said, but if we're doing it, the authorities need to make sure that everybody is doing it. The other thing is when the tyres are at the back of the garage between sessions, they're in sort of mini awnings, if you like, at the back of the garages. And the point was made that a lot of the teams, not by any stroke of luck, have black tarpaulin.
Oh, I wonder why
around the
that's
sun. Well, that of course attracts heat, doesn't it? It helps to warm the tyres up. And they've got to make sure they're covered in out of direct sunlight. But if you've got them out of direct sunlight, they'll still warm up pretty. If you're inside an awning and it's 30 degrees and the awning is made of a black tarpaulin, you're going to get quite hot in there, you can imagine. So yeah, it's something that one or two teams, ABT certainly have been quite vocal about it and said, look, everybody needs to keep an eye on this because some of the teams are trying a few tricks here.
I don't know what you're saying. They went for black because it just looks lovely and it matches delivery.
Doesn't get dirty, does it?
Yeah, that's exactly why they went for black. Yeah.
Wrestling the wheel on board with Thomas Preining then, the young Austrian in charge, keeping his championship hopes alive. The battling performance to get more points in race 2 at the Saxon Ring last time. That was a good Saturday, not such a good Sunday, but he's still there, he's still in the fight. 9 points is next to nothing, so don't rule him out yet. Determined young driver. Maybe the momentum of late has been a little bit in favour of Mirko Bortolotti, but Thomas Preining is a fighter and he is on his home ground here. Comes from Linz in Austria, not quite as local as the Tyrolean driver for the Grasser Racing team, Clement Schmidt. And the team, by the way, are about 10 minutes from the circuit at a small village called St. Margaretten. So this is very much a home race for the Grasser Racing team, and they are with a lot of supporters and sponsors this weekend, so they would dearly love a big weekend. At the moment, Ferraris, BMWs and Mercedes are the top three. Vermeulen, Rast and Auer. Jack Aitken, Ferrari 4th. Maro Engel, Mercedes 5th, Front Pereira, Lamborghini in 6th, and Arjun Maini, Shelton van der Linde, Engin Nguyen and Andrea Caldarelli are rounding out the top 10 as you ride on board with Thomas Preining, thudding over the curves, hanging onto the car at over 200 kilometres an hour, just adjusting his belts, just wiping his face, crossing the line. 129.1, he's on a longer run here, so don't expect lightning times. But this is him going into turn 1. Look at the eyes, absolutely focused, not on the corner, but on what's ahead, what's on the exit. You're never looking at where you are, you're always looking ahead, where you're going to, where you're aiming the car. But amazing, isn't it? In between corners, even at these immense speeds, he just has time to have a look around, wipe his face, get ready for the next braking zone. Turn 3, Brian, is where Kelvin van der Linde was saying that's easily the best overtaking opportunity because you can have a dive on the brakes at the inside, but if you go wide, there's a lot of runoff area there, and you will get 2 or 3 abreast coming out of that corner as well.
Yes, it has been the scene of many an incident over the years. Of course, it's preceded by turns 1, 2 and 3, and turns 2 is really just a kink, so they take that flat out. So it is effectively a very long straight. Then the heavy braking of turn 3, and of course the heavy braking of the sharp right hand. That is the great opportunity for the overtaking, and we see many incidents in turn 3 we have done over the years, and there'll be lots of challenges there. In terms of track limits, can I just say there have been a number of track limit infringements. In fact, there have been so many, the screen isn't big enough, so I can't tell you how many there have been, but all the drivers still exploring the limits. They need to sort this out before qualifying tomorrow, because if you have your fast lap taken away when you're taking the best out of the tyres, that's going to hurt you for the rest of the day.
Whoever in race control has to type out these messages about track limits infringements probably got RSI, repetitive strain injury. So many. There's smoke coming out of the monitors. There's that many. I think there's more limits, track limits infringements messages than drivers at the moment. So they are pushing the boundaries, but they've got to make sure they behave, especially in qualifying tomorrow. Right, Thomas Preining then with a better lap last time around, a 128.7. That was nearly 4/10 quicker than the lap before. His teammate Dennis Olsen in the green peril is not far behind either with a 128.765. So only 32 thousandths of a second between them. Olsen can play a pivotal role in helping Thomas Preining out these last couple of race meetings. From Pereira could help out Mirko Bortolotti as well. So all of them look like they're going pretty well today, and that will be of benefit to them through that speed trap at just under 170 kilometres an hour for the Lamborghini. Mirko Bortolotti might be used to hot weather as an Italian, but he'll be pleased that for once, and it's been a while, it's not going to be 60-odd degrees inside the cockpit of the car, because that Lamborghini, he said, is not quite this latest evolution of the Lamborghini Huracan, not quite as good at keeping the drivers cool as last year's model, and he's certainly been overheating, hasn't he, the last couple of weekends?
Yes, it was the Lamborghini drivers who seem to have suffered the most with the heat, so they'll be quite pleased to see these slightly overcast conditions. Temperatures at 20.8 degrees centigrade, so perhaps just getting a little cooler than it was. Interesting, the times are still about 2/10 slower than this morning, but as we've already suggested, these teams and drivers not necessarily going for fast laps at the moment, but more for a race setup, building it up. Great perspective of Mirko Bortolotti, great camera angle there. He's looking pretty relaxed in there. You've got the view out the front and you've got the view of the driver as he heads up into the cloudy horizon.
Yeah, heading into turn 4, this is downhill run here as well. Down to first gear, your first gear at turn 3 as well. That corner's not quite as slow. He was under 70 kilometres an hour at turn 3, so you're going from, what, 220 odd kilometres an hour up the hill, down from 6th gear, all the way down to first. It's very heavy on the brakes. Of course, the uphill momentum helps slow the car down, but it's a couple of tight corners here. That first gear corner at turn 4 as well is pretty tricky. Through into sector 3 now, downhill through the left at turn 7, through the right kink at turn 8. This is where the track really falls away. Got a slight uphill rise, and then now it begins to go downhill, so the back of the car goes light, so it wants to understeer, it wants to go out wide. Watch the curves on the left, he'll be all over them in a second as he makes his way actually into the pit lane, just to make the point. I was going to make the point of how wide he'll go, but he turns right and bins it off. They're all watching me. I don't want them to see my lines. He said, I'm going into the pits.
He didn't read the script, did he? I was going, where are the cones gone? The track's very narrow. Here he is into the pits. Of course, rehearsing the pit stops also crucial here, although they're not doing a tyre change. They're just holding the car at the moment, and now they're going to spin it around, put it back in the garage. The rain just spitting still, not enough, I think, to affect progress, but you keep looking at the skies. It looked very dark out there. It's a proper autumnal day here at the Red Bull Ring.
Just looking at who's going quickly at the moment. Well, Thomas Preining's still going quick. His last lap was better than the one before, 128.6. So they're doing longer runs now, but that's positive. To be in the 128s, mid 128s on a longer run, and he's had a few laps already. That's very positive for him. We've got Ricardo Fella looking a bit better as well, 129.4. Personal best lap, so they and Sheldon van der Linde, who's out on track at the moment in the low to mid 129s as well, going pretty well. Laurent Heinrichs just on a 128.8. So sort of for the longer runs, for 6-7 lap runs, they're tending to be in the mid to low 129s, whereas the absolute best pace today on older tyres, as Ricardo Fella finds the apex and then some, at the fastest laps that we've had today, 128.3 this morning, 128.5 on a single run pace. Here we go then, glove cam looking straight at the knuckles of Ricardo Fella, looking straight into the eyes of the Swiss driver. He said he feels at home here because he's a Swiss driver, so he's all over in Austria. He's used to this kind of beautiful scenery around him, and he loves this circuit as well. Interestingly, on the way, obviously the drivers and the teams came earlier because we had that test day yesterday, an extra test. which was always scheduled to be a test, even though pre-season tests were here at the Red Bull Ring as well, so nobody's really got any excuses about not knowing the track. But because they came out earlier, just to get the drivers into the right frame of mind, Martin Tomczyk took them out for dinner, Ricardo Feller and Kelvin van der Linde, and then they all went hiking up in the hills on Wednesday.
Yeah, like they needed that in their preparation for this weekend. My prep would be staying in bed for a day, I think, but hey, clearly, what do I know?
It was all about taking in the mountain air, wasn't it? And no better way to relax and set yourselves up for a race weekend, reckons Martin. So we'll see. Sheldon van der Linde, good lap, goes 5th quickest, and has done the absolute best first sector on this lap. Personal best middle sector, could be going to the top of the times with this potentially in this second free practice session. You're on board now with the reigning champion, 4th in the points at the moment. The young South African thuds it over the curbs, comes out of turn 10, sprints for the line, crosses the line with the best time of the session, 1:28.422. That will boost his confidence ahead of qualifying tomorrow. But qualifying, they've got to get right. They haven't always got it right, have they, at Schubert Motorsport and that BMW? It's been a bit of a tricky, often a tricky qualifying session has put them on the back foot of the race, hasn't it?
Well, whatever the opposite to a rain dance is, they'll be doing that tomorrow morning, particularly for qualifying. Bollard News, 5 down, 1 to go. You can see them scattered around the corner as he came out. Track limits, what track limits? But Sheldon van der Linde looking very good. Good to see Sandra Holsom just rising up the time screens a bit as well. He's up to 20:30, he passed his probation in this earlier in the season. Pushing hard in the BMW, so one eye on Sandra Holsom as well as he continues to improve. Ricardo Feller is the fastest of the Audis, but he's down in 18th place. So the Audis once again struggling as they did this morning, all of them in the bottom third of the timing screen.
So that's Brian Oliver talking a load of old bollards again here at the Red Bull Ring.
You waited for that, didn't you?
I did. Sheldon, quite proud of that one. Sheldon van der Linde, René Rast, Schubert teammates, 1st and 2nd, 49 thousandths of a second apart. This is looking good. Do you know it's been over a year since René Rast won a DTM race?
Wow. I can't remember the last time that the gap was that big, that was for sure. Of course, he has been learning the BMW, and an Audi driver through and through up until this year. Was looking very, very quick, particularly around Norris Ring time, but it's tailed off a bit. He had an average Sachsenring, 2 8th places. Well, I'd be happy with that, but for him, that would be considered a fail in his book, I imagine.
Well, Aaron Heinrich is looking pretty handy this weekend as well. He's there in 6th place. So, Porsches, 4th, 5th, 6th at the moment. Preining, Olsen and Heinrich. BMWs, Ferraris, Porsches, Mercedes, all look like got something to offer. The one that's definitely lagging behind is the Audi. Ricardo Feller is the best of the Audis at the moment in 18th place. And he's over a second adrift as well. Now, I know they're not necessarily going for qualifying times. I know new tyres have come on the cars, but you never see that, do you? Audis are always up there. They always start the weekend pretty well on a Friday. They're not today.
I would guarantee there'll be some kind of appeal that'll be put in at the end of today by Audi, because they clearly feel disadvantaged. That is a wonderful camera angle. I think that gives as good a perspective as any as to what it looks like to be a driver. You can see him just with the flick of the gear shift and the adjustment on the steering wheel going into the corner, changing it down through the gears. Brilliant, brilliant perspective. He's looking very chilled about it all, and he continues to push, but he's not setting any big records here at the moment. So going for the race setup, but clearly very frustrated today.
I was just talking about Sheldon van der Linde having some tricky qualifying sessions this year. I mean, he's had some good ones, not of late. I mean, the Lausitz Ring and Sachsenring, his best qualifying has been 6th. He's had a 6th, a 21st and 11th and a 16th the last 4 qualifying sessions, which is what's contributed to him being the lowest point scorer out of the top 6 championship contenders. He's had a pole, he's had other front row starts this year, but not on the last couple of weekends. So his average, Sheldon van der Linde, his average grid or qualifying this year has been 11th. Wow. A driver 4th in the championship. So you think, that's not great, is it? But actually, because it's been so wide open this year, Mirko Bortolotti, championship leader, his average grid is 7th, which isn't stunning either, is it?
Wow.
It's just that they've been sharing all these pole positions. It's been mixed up every time. Best qualifier on average this year, although he's only had 1 pole, is Thomas Preining, and he's averaged 6th on the grid. So that shows, we talked about all these different race winners, but we've also had 9 different pole sitters this year as well, haven't we?
and the qualifying is so important, as was the case with most of these circuits. If you're not starting in the front quarter of the grid, you're probably not going to make it onto the podium. And of course, there are points that are paid out in qualifying as well. So really interested to hear that. The guys that are at the top of the points, they've all had their up and down days, haven't they? But qualifying is so important. It will be again here tomorrow. If you're starting in the back part of the pack, not only have you got a long afternoon ahead of you, but you're also in the famous carbon fibre zone where a lot of the accidents seem to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. As Maro Engel certainly found to his cost at the Sachsenring a couple of weeks ago. If you're in that middle squeeze, it's hard to survive, isn't it, without any damage? That was the ruining of his weekend, that's for sure. Ricardo Feller then on board with him and looking into the eyes of the Swiss driver, way out over the curbs, off he goes, and makes his way back eventually across the Austrian border, back onto the racetrack at turn 10, fires it over the line, but he's having to push that hard to try to get to the top speed. Because if you've not got the top speed, what's the biggest problem? You've got overtaking, because that's where your opportunities normally are, at the end of a straight into a braking zone. But we saw that, didn't we, at the Lausitzring, lap after lap after lap, quick out of the final turn, coming on out of the banking at the Lausitzring, could not find a way past Bortolotti's Lamborghini.
And that has been Ricardo Feller's complaint for the last few weekends, and continues to be here. I think race director Sven Stopper might be calling a bit of a conference at the end of this, somewhere along the way. Part of that is costing a fortune in bollards, but the fact that track limits are going to be an issue. And I just get a feeling that qualifying and maybe even the race could be seriously affected by track limits. You can see the bollards are scattered there. Well, there aren't any there now. And there's one into turn 9. They are there for a reason, and that is to control the edge of the track. If there was a wall there, they wouldn't be going out there. That is the argument. And so they need to stay within that. And I think there might be some conversations. Is this?
Here we go.
Bollard watch, right? Bye-bye. There we go. Lovely. René Rast. So there's an invoice going to Mr. R. Rast. Oh, here we go. Here comes the next one.
It's called the off stump.
And we got him. Hey.
So René Rast got the off stump. Luke Rexler got the mid stump. There's one left.
Here comes the third. Who's this? Is this from
Wonder what's going to happen.
No, it's Alessio Delida.
Bang. There you go.
Straight underneath. There we
Hat-trick. Oh dear, those noodles go absolutely far. There's some poor person here every session has to keep coming back, trudging back with another box full of bollards. Oh, you just fixed these 20 minutes ago. Got to put them all back again now. Dear, well, oh dear. Keeps somebody employed though, doesn't it?
The thing is, there is a serious issue, and that means track limits. They are there for a reason. And again, I think there might be a memo going around at the very least. Also, a message come up on our timing screen saying drivers must use indicators when entering the pits, and we saw it this morning. It was Lucas Stoltz, wasn't it, who went to go into the pits and then suddenly darted back out and actually was under investigation. I haven't heard or read anything since then, as we look at Andrea Caldarelli, the driver who's making his debut in the DTM this year in the GRT Grasser, the wonderful gold and black GRT Grasser Lamborghini.
Yeah, so race-winning car at the hands of Maximilian Powell at the Nürburgring. 7th quickest in the first session for Caldarelli. At the moment, he is in 14th place, 0.6 of a second drift. A driver that's been around for a while now. He was in single-seaters in Formula Renault 15 years ago. Eventually, after rising his way up to GP3, which was the forerunner to the FIA Formula 3 Championship, he concentrated on GT racing. Now, that is a little bit wide, I would say.
Track limits, you think?
Maybe, but that definitely wasn't an advantage game there, was it? Thierry Vermeulen just overshot completely the apex on the way into turn 10. But, you know, it is easily done. It's that downhill section. It's such a fast sweeping corner, or 2 corners through there. You've got to be committed. But if you get your line ever so slightly wrong at those speeds, it accentuates it. You go even wider, don't you? Remember Formula 1 here and qualifying? Remember Sergio Perez, track limits, infringements, dropped him out of the running, didn't it, on the Saturday? He had to come back on the Sunday. So even at that level, they struggle. You nearly lost another bollard there.
Well, I have to say, if you're going to do track limits, today is the day to do it. Thierry Vermeulen, he's looking so dialed in. Yes, the Ferrari, the turbocharged Ferrari, is very quick here at the Red Bull Ring, but he's currently in 3rd in the timings at 1:28.579. He's looking good to, if he can show this kind of form tomorrow, certainly to improve on his best of the season, which is a 5th place, which he scored last time out at Sachsenring. One thing about Thierry Vermeulen, he has got progressively better as this season has gone on, hasn't he?
Absolutely right. Yeah, he's one of the form drivers. If you look at point scoring finishes of late, he started to shoot his way up the order, and it's just started to click for him. I mean, he was impressive in the first weekend, I thought, at Oschersleben, but he got points in his debut weekend, so he's not that high up in the overall championship, but he's beginning to climb up the order, and 5th place last time out. That is now 6 consecutive top 10 finishes for Thierry Vermeulen. He got points in his very first race at Oschersleben. Had to wait a while for his 2nd point scoring finish, but Vermeulen, impressive. I hope he comes back next year, the young Dutch driver, because if he carries on this upward curve, he's going to be battling for podiums before too long, I reckon. Maybe even this season. Wouldn't put it past him. As we go back on board with Sheldon van der Linde. How long we got left to go? Just under 6 minutes left in this session. It's got a bit darker again. It's tricky for us to tell out the commentary box window because it's got tinted glass, so it looks kind of worse than it is. But I definitely think there are more. Yeah, you can see it there. More and more clouds starting to come above. I think it'll probably just about hold off for the rest of this session. Yeah, no, cursed it, haven't I? Absolutely right. Most of the cars out track still, though. You've only got Dennis Olsen, Lucas Sauer, Ingen Guen and Kelvin van der Linde in the pits currently. Yeah,
and Luca Engstler, well, he didn't even try to go inside the bollard, went right around it, came back in. That one will flash up on the screens any second from now. But Luca Engstler in the Audi is the fastest of the Audis. He's gone quicker than Ricardo Feller, so 1:29.359. That is 18th place, so it's nowhere near where they want to be. But nice to see Luca Engstler, certainly the fastest of the Audis at the moment.
Yeah, his dad, Franz Engstler, was out in action at Spa racing and getting on the podium and having good championship success in the Ferrari Challenge last week. So still competing at a very high level. Jack Aitken is on a personal best lap in the Ferrari. He was late to improve right at the end of the first free practice session. He's got his 28th birthday coming up tomorrow. Can he get a pole? Can he get a race win or a podium on his 28th birthday? We shall find out, but he certainly looks on good form. 170 kilometres an hour through that speed trap. The absolute best speed trap takes him to about 240 kilometres an hour. Aitken currently in 9th place, 39.6 through the middle sector. 39.2 is the best middle sector by René Rast, so he's going to be about half a second down on the absolute best time. But he might improve his own time, possibly, but he's going to stay at the tail end of the top 10 with this, I reckon. Yeah, 9th place still, 0.6 of a second down, but he's going to get a couple more laps out of the session. In terms of tyres this weekend, there are some circuits where you get 4 sets of new slicks to last Saturday and Sunday, and some where you get 3. And because it's a relatively smooth surface, it's not very abrasive on tyres, you only get 3 here. So Nürburgring, Lausitzring, Norris Ring and the Red Bull Ring get 3 sets of new tyres to last for 2 qualifying sessions and 2 races. For free practice, you always get 2 sets of nominated used tyres and 1 new set of tyres to use on the Friday. Berko Bortolotti at the moment only in 16th, but he was 3rd quickest earlier on in the first session, so you won't be too panicked by that. And there's Josef Vega, who was the driver quickest in this morning's first free practice session. As a driver, he's been pretty impressive. You know him from GT Masters racing, and so a real racing family, isn't it, the Vegas?
Yes, we've got Hamza Vega, the older brother. We've got Yusuf in the middle, and Salman. Watch over your shoulders. Salman Vega, his younger brother, is currently leading the championship in GT Masters, along with Elias Seppänen. Both of them have got eyes on a DTM seat before too long. They've got to win the GT Masters Championship first, also racing this weekend. But there's something in the water in the Vega household, that's for sure, because they're all very, very quick. Hamza Vega is doing prototypes at the moment, so he's looking good there as we look at René Rast. He's also exploring the edges of the circuit.
He is, yeah, 2nd quickest at the moment. Got on pole here last year. He's had 1 pole this year, which was at the Norris Ring, but didn't win the race. Quite a robust move to get the victory in the end from Thomas Priding, you might remember. So Thomas will be looking to repeat what he did last year, win at the Norris Ring, win at the Spielberg as well if he can, here on his home weekend. René Rast then across the line. That wasn't a mega quick lap, 1:29.624 seconds, about 2/10 off his absolute best. Luca Engstler pushing on, 2 personal best sectors, but overall standing in 18th place. But still the best of the Audis. 1:29.2 is his best lap. Ricardo Feller's 2nd best with the 1:29.4. Then Patrick Niederhauser 1:29.449. Kelvin van der Linde is the one that's struggling the most, isn't he, in this session? 1:29.7 for Kelvin.
Yeah, it's not often you see Kelvin van der Linde in 26th on the timing screen, but then they might be working on race setups as well. But still, fairly tight. I mean, there is less than a second that's separating the top 19 on the screen at the moment, and we haven't even got to qualifying yet. Marvin Dienst in the 99 car, of course, he is joined during the season in that car. Currently 17th at 129.225, so he's picking up the pace as well. Personal bests in sectors 1 and 3, as you can see from the graphic there.
Just opposite the commentary box window, just had a practice pit stop for Jesse Vega, which all looked pretty good to me. We don't have a clock on it, but as you said, that's something else I've got to practice here. The pit stops during this session, it's something that can be a massive impact on the results of a race when they come in to make the mandatory pit stops, especially on a relatively short lap like this. Marco Wittmann heading into the pits now. Only in 15th place in this session, but had a good day on Thursday, yesterday in the test. And then on his way into turn 1 to get one more lap in the session with only 42 seconds left on the clock is René Rast. They use that curve, don't they, Brian, on the exit? It looks pretty robust and a bumpy ride, particularly if you're in a Lamborghini, you're from Pereira and you're only slightly off the ground there. That looked like a real wide ride at the start of the session.
Yes, we're measuring altitude as well as distance here, as Mirko Bortolotti looks like he is now done for this session. Into the pits he comes. All the data has been gathered. The next time he goes out on track, well, I was going to say the next time he goes on track will be qualifying tomorrow, but we've got the track safari to come this afternoon, haven't we? So there's going to be some buses out on the track, and if you're one of the people that gets to sit on that bus to watch the cars going around you, I'm very jealous. I'm told it is the experience of a lifetime.
Yeah, just to explain, the track safari. So after this, the cars come into the pits. A number of coaches go onto the track, stay on one side of the circuit, and then the DTM cars drive around them, not particularly slowly. I mean, they're kind of going for it still, whizzing past, and then they swap sides, the bus, so the passengers on the other side of the bus can see it, so you feel like you're in the race. Although, I mean, you wouldn't know where to look here at Red Bull Ring. Do you look at the cars? Do you look at the views when you're up at turn 3? Because it's beautiful here, isn't it?
Cars every time.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. You can look at the views anytime.
Yeah,
you know, it's been a great experience. So it's something that was brought in earlier this year and has become, not every round, but a pretty regular feature, hasn't it, the second half of the season, the track safari.
We've had Mike David Ortman was one of the drivers that was guiding around as with the microphone on the bus. Various other drivers as well, particularly from the GT4, that talk the passengers around and tell them what's going on. Quite an experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So that will be coming up. A bit more running for the drivers, even though they won't be able to go completely flat out. You can still go flat out for most of the lap, can't they? So kind of extended session for them. But it's going to be Sheldon van der Linde, René Rast for Schubert Motorsport that end the session 1-2. Free practice. It's not the be-all and end-all, but it's got to be a good feeling going into tomorrow. And can we get René Rast his 26th pole position? If he can do that, he's already level with Bernd Schneider's record, but that will be the most drivers, most pole positions a driver has ever got in DTM. He's also only 2 podiums away from 50 podiums in the DTM. René Rast had 48 podiums, so some records might be broken this weekend. It's been a quiet couple of meetings for René Rast, but you never rule him out. So there you can see spectacular backdrop to the Red Bull Ring, and there results of free practice 2. Sheldon van der Linde, he's got to close the gap this weekend if he's to stay in the championship fight. He's had a good Friday. He's fastest in free practice 2 from his teammate René Rast. Thierry Vermeulen continues to impress. 3rd for him. Thomas Preining had a longer run, but some quick laps in there as well. 4th for him, 5th for his teammate Dennis Olsen. Lauren Heinrich has looked good today. He was 6th. Josef Vega was 1st in free practice 1, 7th in this one. And then Lucas Auer, Jack Aitken and Maro Engel rounding out the top 10 in the second free practice session. Just half a second between them, and in fact only just over half a second covering the top 14 in the session, less than 9/10 covering the top 19. Impressive day for Andrea Caldarelli on his DTM debut in the top 10 in free practice 1, just outside the top 10 in free practice 2. But a tale of woe for the Audis. Luca Engsler, the best of them, in 18th. Ricardo Feller, 3rd in the championship, back in 20th. And then other Audi drivers struggling as well. Kelvin van der Linde, wasn't a good session that either. but for Clement Schmidt, was it, back in 27th place. So that's it for Friday action, track action, but there's lots more to come here at DTM, the penultimate weekend of the season. We go qualifying early doors tomorrow with the first qualifying session at 8:55 tomorrow, and race 1 coming up tomorrow afternoon. From Brian Oliver and me, Chris Hartley, thanks for watching. Join us again for the rest of the weekend here at the Red Bull Ring. Goodbye for now.